Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to A Look in the Lab. I'm Fran Parathyris, and today I have with me three very esteemed speakers, CDTs, professionals, great friends to Zahn, who are going to be discussing Lab Day Chicago with us. Lab Day Chicago was just about 2 weeks ago, and it was a huge success. I mean, coming from colleagues and social media, everybody seemed to have a wonderful time and learned a tremendous amount from these speakers, as well as many other educational programs that Lab Day Chicago is best known for. There were approximately 4,500 laboratory and clinical professionals that came together from all over together for the first time since COVID, and get to learn a lot about what was new and innovative in this past year. So everything new came into this meeting, and it was very exciting. There was a lot of education going on in the Zahn Ballroom, and like I said, three of our presenters are here today to discuss what they lectured on. And some of the topics were removables, fixed prosthetics, and implantology. So I'd like to introduce them. First, we have Daniel Alter, and Daniel is an MSc, MDT, CDT. He is also the executive editor of IDT Magazine, as well as the professor of restorative dentistry here at City University of New York. We also have Milos Markovic with us, and he is a CDT as well. And he is the CAD/CAM director and director of implantology over at Aurora Dental Laboratory in Wappinger Falls, New York. And finally, we have Chris Schermerhorn, and Chris Schermerhorn is a CDT, and he is also the owner and operator of Northern Virginia Dental Laboratory. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and all of us at Zahn, we really appreciate you. You did a great job for us in the glass classroom, and we really appreciate it. Would you mind giving us a little bit of what you lectured on so that everybody at home will be able to hear? Dan, could you go first?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Fran. Thank you for, it's both an honor and a privilege to be here. Also, I want to say to all the amazing ladies out there, happy International Women's Day. It's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, the energy at Chicago was absolutely, I think it was by far one of the best ones ever, if not the best ones ever, because certainly the camaraderie, certainly the understanding of what it is that the profession has and what we can provide as a whole. So I've had several lectures throughout. I've had the privilege of lecturing with Milos on the desk components and implants and what are the possibilities that can be used, which are very, very laboratory centric solutions, so that it allows us as a laboratory community to be able to provide a high level of prosthetics, implant supported prosthetics, but still giving us some control and being in the driver's seat with what components and what solutions and so much more. So that was one. Then another one, which was exciting, was the ability to now sinter zirconia in 22.4 minutes, which is absolutely, I mean, for me, it's incredible because we've been on this kind of business model where overnight is when we're sintering zirconia, and some laboratories have different variations of it. But ultimately, when a dentist comes, and it seems like every patient always has a wedding the next day or always has some kind of vacation that they need to go to the next day, a zirconia restoration wasn't always the possibility, but now it is. And it's really something that I feel strongly that arms the laboratory with another service opportunity for their clients and specifically for their patients, but even for their clients as well, to provide, or rather charge for that service, because it is a service, it is a rush fee. And I think that's within the norm of what is in the dental laboratory industry. And now we can achieve that with zirconia. So I think it's very exciting for sure.
Excellent. There was a lot of buzz right after that lecture. I was there and I had to see it. Everybody running over to see Zerlix transitions and the Shempaz CS. So that was really cool to see. How about you, Milos?
Well, for me, the idea was to also thanks everyone for having me today. Dan and I really try to bring home the idea of what is the main benefit of doing screw-retained restorations, and to kind of sort of bring about the basics of why they're important. And once you've decided that you want to do screw-retained restorations and understand their benefits, how do you choose the right component system? And so I kind of went back and tried to bring home to what was our process here at Aurora DTC before we decided to go, national and start to mill on a global, on a big scale. We wanted to streamline our production, have a wide range of supported implant systems, have a one-stop shop for all of our 510 FDA clear components. And this is how Desk came into play. So as a technician who works with these cases every day, I try to talk to technicians to show them the process of taking these cases from beginning to the end and the ease of use, whether it's the digital workflow and nomenclature that's used with these parts, whether it's ordering the parts, how these parts come together between digital analogs, digital models, the milled Zerlux transition that sits over those titanium bases, and then ultimately the cake on the top, which is the angulated screw channel, which is what Desk offers on their gold anodized tie bases. So it was very interesting to see how everybody kind of sort of was able to get the most benefit out of that lecture by seeing how they can implement that in their workflow. So after we were done with our lecture, Danny and I were able to discuss a lot of these with the lab owners across the country.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Chris, you spoke on behalf of Meyerson, and they made a big splash in our ballroom. So if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I did 2 presentations. One was Trusana, and then on the other side of the spectrum, I did one on Roland's new DC53 mill. First with Trusana, the material was released about a year ago, and we're now getting ready to release the TrueJet printer along with the material. So the material, I think, is the first material that really gives us as good, if not better, than what we're able to produce by the analog processes, right? So we're happy, relatively speaking, with the dentures we're able to produce nowadays. With 3D printing, with digital design, it makes training employees, it makes growing much easier. But we can design everything beautiful, but if we don't have a material that can again be as good, if not better, than what we can produce the traditional way, well, it doesn't really give us any advantage. Trusana is the first material to come along when it comes to its function, when it comes to its aesthetics. I think actually accomplishes that. And then now, with the TrueJet 3D printer being able to do a monolithic tricolored or multicolored denture, denture-based teeth all one piece, but actually multiple shades of pink as well as tooth shades, very fast produced. That all gets mind-bogglingly exciting. It is. We are moving along at a crazy pace in this industry, and it's really exciting. And then I spoke about Roland's new mill that was kind of originally geared for plastics. It'll do everything, but that's another interesting concept, right? So all the technologies have been really developed on the Crenna Bridge side. Everything's motivated the Crenna. So now companies are starting to realize that there is a huge lack on the removable side. And there's always going to be a need to mill some of these materials. There's some materials that just can't be produced, especially when it comes to plastics, at least not right now with 3D printing. And so now they have mills that are more robust so that they can handle really removing material fast. And so it's funny, I'm on both sides of the thing, but they're all needed. It's not like they're enemies. They're just going to be a partnership as we move forward.
Exactly.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I want this to be interactive with our attendees, so I'm going to launch a poll, guys, and we can continue talking throughout. The first poll, if our attendees wouldn't mind answering, is: did you attend LMT Lab Day Chicago? And if you would please answer yes or no, that'll be great. And then we'll discuss the results as they come in. But I wanted to know personally, what did it feel like for you guys to be back in Chicago, being that this is the real true first year back from COVID? How do you guys feel about being back and seeing people that you haven't seen in a long time? Dan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would be happy to, and thank you. For me, it was absolutely exciting. I've seen so many faces that we haven't seen in the last 2 years. So the energy has really been phenomenal, as I said earlier, and the camaraderie. Everybody. Overall, I think the tone was incredibly happy. Because as you recall from last year at LMT, again, they had some restrictions and including restaurants and so on and so forth. But then that Monday following our show is when everything got lifted. So it's a little ironic, but certainly, we've seen, I had the privilege of seeing some folks that I haven't seen in the last 2 years for various reasons. And, it's just great to see everybody succeeding, thriving, and really doing incredibly well. So the stories shared, the experiences, the journey, everything throughout is what I absolutely love. And then the sharing of ideas, sharing of thoughts, sharing of knowledge. I think that's where a lot of the power that comes with these type of lab days, because I continuously learn every single time I have a conversation with another fellow dental laboratory owner or manager or technician, because it's amazing to see how, we certainly have ways where we're doing things and we're doing things successfully, but every now and then you have somebody that has a different perspective or a different pivot that is just like, that's clever. Let me try that. And that's something that I absolutely love in going to these type of shows. And certainly Lab Day did not disappoint in that realm. So it was really, really exciting and really, really a pleasure to be there and see so many of my friends and colleagues throughout. So it was great.
For me, it was the smiling faces. I
Yes.
miss smiling faces. You guys know I'm a registered dental hygienist, and you know what? People being masked up, it just bothered me so much, and I know that we had to, but I missed the smiling faces, and there was a lot of hugging, a lot of emotion in the room. It was like a very happy atmosphere, and it was so good to be around that finally. So that was what made me feel good. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, that you don't realize how many people you see one time a year, and it's in Chicago.
Right.
And it's like you're walking around, you're like, dude, what have you been up to? It's been 3 years. Because some people I saw last year, but like you said, it was just a abbreviated version of that show for sure. So yeah, it reminded me that we are a community, and Chicago and LMT East, LMT West, and the local shows. I see people, but Chicago is like that once a year, time where I see certain people. And I saw it. We did a road show with Zon last year, and we started it early or late summer, and we did one up in Philadelphia, and we had 70, 80 people show up.
Yeah.
And I was like, people are really, they're starving to get out and get with their comrades. And then we did, I don't know, right before, from like November into December, it was every week I was seeing Daniel and everything, and every show was just about sold out. And so I was like, I bet Chicago is going to be gangbusters this year, and sure enough it was. So yeah, I think that's definitely, and walking around for me, I get away from the booth, from doing presentations, and I walk around and seeing the new technologies, in real time, talking to people, new vendors that I haven't seen, new ideas that companies have for a product or material they're selling. So, like Daniel said, you learn as much as you teach while you're there.
Absolutely. Milos, how about you? How did it feel? And I know you had your wife along with you. She's also a technician, so that was cool.
Yeah, so we obviously have a tradition. Our Chicago is a big tradition for us. We used to go with it was a technician that was my mentor who passed away this year, John Esserino. But this year we had some other people with us, so it was really nice to bring everyone together. I like to echo what Danny and Chris were saying about how everybody's like robust in how they're performing and how strong their businesses are and how it's a community. So what I think the interesting happened with our communities, I think COVID strengthened our community. It forced a lot of lab owners, a lot of my peers, people who are involved in labs or larger labs, smaller labs, to really get creative and actually get stubborn about succeeding in the industry. And so the result of the last 2 years of doing that actually showed this year of how much people have grown. I've seen people buy new furniture for the labs because they're expanding plenty, not 1, 2, maybe 5 or 10 different milling machines for different applications. So how much people have grown and how much people are thriving is really what was the biggest impression from the show. And I think COVID had a big influence on that.
Well, everyday technology is changing, right?
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
decided at that point, now's the time I need to learn and I need to get my lab and my business up to par, right?
Exactly.
With what the
Yeah.
industry is looking for. I do have results of the poll, and 25% of our attendees made it to LMT Chicago and 75% did not. So I'm really excited about this program because it's going to get, reinforcement for those 25%, but the 75% are very interested in learning what was new and what was innovated. So we'll be talking about that. There was a lot of products and services that made the meeting a success. What really stands out in your mind? Chris, I'll start with you.
Again, we kind of talked about it, the success is the camaraderie and everything that was kind of developed. I like that you have the main floor. All right, and I noticed that it seemed like everything was expanded into the new side and everything. But I like that you have the main floor where you can walk from booth to booth, and then you have the more intimate areas. And we've always had that, but it seemed like Zon, really created their room to be like a one-stop shop to be able to go around and see everything that they, kind of had to offer. You could go, I know Zon had the table clinic side, and then they had the presentation side. So there was a good mix of that type of learning. Yeah, I mean, I think it was everything that Chicago always was, just bigger and better and just nicer. So I think that was, the thing that I kind of walked away impressed with, was the kind of the whole feeling with how that all went.
What about new innovations, guys? Like, what was the most exciting piece? Like, if you had to take one piece of innovation, what would that be? Milos.
So, well, we're really interested in AI. So we're always looking at how the CAD design companies or maybe other alternatives are coming onto the market and try to offer AI solutions. We like to look at AI not as our competitor, but as our assistant. So it's still in its infancy. And so we're kind of paying close attention to what's going on with that, whether it's 3Shape Automate or some other cloud-based potential AI services that exist in the market. Also AI that does immediate smile design for a lot of dentists that labs can start offering as a service. And then on a more practical side, the new 3Shape F8 scanner was really interesting for us because as a large milling center, we get a lot of models that come in. It allows us to, so it's a dual stand. It allows us to scan two models at the same time, sort of like the old D2000. However, it's an open chamber design. Yeah. And so now we can put our articulator that's not tilted anymore with an accessory. It just rotates 360 around as the scanner sensor comes down, and also allows the impressions to be scanned vertically all around with another additional model. So it gives us a lot of flexibility and speed. So that's definitely something we're going to be utilizing to improve our workflow here. And then in terms of materials, as Chris and I were discussing beforehand, we're really interested in removables now as the way digital materials are evolving on the removable side. Mm-hmm. And so we're working closely with TCS and their flexible resins, and they were also closely looking at Trusana and Flexera to see how they perform in the market. So these are sort of like very interesting things for us as the removable grows more and more in the market.
Excellent. Dan, how about you?
So I agree with all the sentiments that my colleagues here have said, and what certainly on the removable side, one thing that really caught my eye is the PolyJet technology, because you're able to really accomplish a significant, highly aesthetic, highly quality type of prosthetic, a full denture, while within the design being able to layer, for lack of better terms, with the PolyJet. So, Stratus has had a few samples and went throughout. So it really provided a great, outcome. The fast sintering with the Shenpaz CS was, to me, something that was that aha moment that I really appreciated, because again, I see it as an opportunity for laboratories to offer another service, offer another level of a line item where they charge, and being able to satisfy and service both their clients and patients. But the biggest thing that I found out of the theme that I saw in Lab Day is workflow. And it's not necessarily, when we looked at years back, it was, we had multiple components that were great, but we had to kind of figure out what is in between and what is the workflow. And I think that companies have done some significant strides in making that workflow seamless. So it's not that the future is CAD/CAM, the future is now. CAD/CAM is very much here, and our ability to produce some, prosthetics that are superior than perhaps even the analog has really risen to the top, from materials to technology to software and everything in between. But the best part of this is what I've seen was that the workflow is well thought out and well, kind of flushed out to where it's very efficient, and you're able to generate a output, whether it's removable or fixed or implants or anything in between, very easily. So the task, or the learning curve rather, is significantly lessened, and you're able to be productive significantly quicker and very much easier. So I thought that was a definitely a takeaway where I've seen a lot of efforts to make the workflows more streamlined and easier.
Chris, what about you, innovation wise? What was the one?
Yeah, it's going to sound funny, but it's actually the PolyJet technology, and specifically the TrueJet. Now, I do consulting for Meyerson, so it sounds like, well, but I haven't got. I'm usually at the end of product development. They kind of develop things, and then they kind of get in my hand and say, okay, Chris, real world, how is everything, and how's the workflow, how's the process, how's everything go? And so I haven't really gotten like my true hands on the TrueJet printer yet. And as I looked into it, because I'm not a huge lab, and that type of technology is a good bit more expensive than the printers that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
But as you really sit back and you start to kind of think about, lease programs or however you might have to go about it, and what that printer can actually accomplish, in the lab as far as speed, accuracy, and aesthetics, now you're kind of like, well, this all starts to make financial sense. And so that's really the thing that is impressing me, that is really interesting me to possibly move towards, for sure.
See, a lot of innovation, a lot of things for our attendees for today to think about.
Yeah.
Dan, I want to ask you a question. As an educator and executive editor of IDT, what is your message to the industry on innovation that you saw? But as a professor of restorative dentistry at City University, what would you be adding, or would you want to add to the curriculum that would benefit your students that you saw out of this innovation?
Right. So that's a great question, Fran. Thank you. So certainly for the industry, understanding that there's, as I said, the major theme was workflows, that things have become easier. Solutions have become more streamed towards the laboratory, so that the process by which they can accomplish these prosthetics is easier. Now, my suggestion seeing that is that we should always grow. We should always expand as a laboratory community. And that's where the innovation and technology is really exciting, because the possibilities are truly remarkable with what you can do. If you can think it, in essence, you can figure out how to do it. And, my message is kind of, where it was with digital before, where people were on the fence. Should we do it? Should we not do it? I think at this point, most have already realized that that's not the future, but it is the now. But then now pivot a little bit and take a look. What else can you do with this? Where can you expand your offerings? How can your laboratory produce something else where you can generate revenue? And the ability with the technology and the software, you can absolutely do. So it's something that, just a reflective, and whether it's, for the industry or, understanding that just because we do something for 20 years doesn't mean that we have to continue doing the same exact way. Figure out ways of doing other things, think outside the box, and generate some exciting, opportunities for your laboratory and your technicians and so on and so forth. As far as the school, quite candidly, that's a mission that I'm constantly on. And what I strive to do is, make our students as relevant and as ready to enter the workforce as possible. So that includes innovations, that includes materials, that includes digital, that includes so much more that we're doing here in New York City College of Technology. But yet I'm constantly hungry for more, because I feel it's my responsibility and my duty to make sure that everybody that's invested the 2 years with us in our program, and however it is, that they're as ready to be gainfully employed. Not only for them, because it's really amazing. And Fran, we've had conversations about this, there's all different walks of life. And, it's appreciable to be able to see a student that perhaps socioeconomically or not not the most privileged means, but they're able to learn a skill where they can go out with entrepreneurial or perhaps even work. And now you're elevating not just the student, not just their family, but multi-generations. And it's a beautiful thing to see. So that's where I wear a badge of honor, because, I have the privilege and the blessing to be able to touch human, other people and really be able to elevate them. And that's where my constant growth and constant hunger is, to be able to give them the very best that I possibly can. And that's where I bring back things from Lab Day and other conferences and other shows like that, where, they are now with me there. Not physically, but they're with me there because I share everything that I've seen and the excitement, and hopefully that feeds their excitement and their opportunity to grow in this industry as well.
Absolutely. Milos, as program director and also director of implantology for a really national milling center, what products or services are you most interested in, and how do you see integrating them into your already very successful business?
Right. So I just want to pivot from or continue from where I initially mentioned the new scanner that we're going to be implementing into our technology. That's going to allow us to shorten our scanning time. It's going to give us more speed, more precision. It's going to create more accuracy so that a lot of these large cases that we work with are going to be more consistent. But big part of my day involves talking to lab owners all across the country who use us and trying to convince them on jumping into new technologies. What Danny and Chris are saying about implementing these new technologies with these new resins and new millable materials is good, and we will bring that technology forward, but it's also educating them and telling them what the value is of using this technology. And so a lot of these new removable materials that are coming out, whether they're 3D printed or milled, we will be incorporating that. We have streamlined our design process as much as possible so that we could design these very well looking restorations, well-fitting restorations, but now we need to implement the back end, which is the final materials that these are going to be made out of. So training them on how that works and what the benefit of that is going to be the biggest challenge for us. However, we will jump onto these technologies because we see removable as a big growth, especially in the last few years. And so also looking at different alternatives to removables, classic metal removables. And another interesting development is we actually started recommending and also seeing other labs utilize selling intraoral scanners to their dentists. This was usually a case that was reserved for larger chains or maybe larger DSOs or larger labs. But now we see smaller labs seeing a benefit of getting some of these intraoral scanners and giving them to the dentist. And so establishing this relationship with the dentist where they have this digital workflow sort of set for them. And so we help them along that process as well because they have so many options now with these scanners. So we see a lot of labs integrating like really tightly into the digital workflow. There's really no going back. So I'm guessing most of our time is going to be spent next year just bringing these technologies in and then convincing everybody else of why they're good, because we wouldn't bring them if they didn't work for us. So if we're already doing that, we just need to make the case that this is good for them as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely educating clinical teams and trying to get them on board, right? Because without them being on board, you can't implement
Exactly.
a lot of these technologies. So that's great, partnering up, and yeah, that's really cool. And Milos, would you like be training these clinical teams on actually intraoral scanning and that if they're not really familiar with it?
Correct. So we will give them recommendations on scanners depending on the price range that they're comfortable with, and then trying to establish digital workflows so that that communication between them and the clinician is seamless as much as possible. So that's another area of growth that we see as a milling center as well. And it's sort of a lot of that is already have intraoral scanners, but there's also a huge chunk of them that don't. I'm sure
Yeah.
Son, because you guys do a lot of research, have even more data on what that number actually is. So there's a big market that's still available there, and it's usually reserved for smaller dentists and smaller labs. So there's a good potential there.
I mean, I know of dentists personally that have scanners in their office and they're just using it for like ortho, clear aligners. They're not
Yeah.
using it for, laboratory process, and I just don't understand that. They're just not comfortable. So I love that. I love that idea. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Chris, being the owner and operator of a very well-respected laboratory in Northern Virginia, what do you see implementing into your business to increase your revenue and streamline your workflow that you found interesting at Lab Day?
Yeah, so I could go with the obvious that I've been regurgitating the TrueJet. That makes sense, but to kind of step away from what I spoke about and kind of something that I actually saw as I was walking on the floor was GC's OptiGlaze and Gradia system. And so I have that system and I've used it for many, many years. But there was a lot of little table clinics going on, people showing real life demonstrations. And it kind of got me thinking it's, there's an opportunity now to really make a digital denture a high-end boutique denture by using some of these materials. And, at the show, I was kind of like, well, what am I doing? Why am I not utilizing this? I mean, the Gradia system, a lot of people think of tissue, the tissue system they have, but they have a whole shaded, for tooth shade system where you can build incisals. And with a lot of these 3D printed systems, the material is in the same family. So the bond is exceptional between them. And, you can use the OptiGlaze to highlight the base, to give it little reds and little pales, to make that base look a little more alive and a little more vital. Same thing with the teeth. My experiences with Trusana has a nice amount of translucency. And so combined with the OptiGlaze, it doesn't look like you've painted it on the surface. It kind of carries the color through and really makes for a nice vital looking tooth. And even cutting back the Trusana and layering it with an incisal that's with the Gradia system for really high-end, beautiful tooth to create internal mamelons and things like that. And it kind of opened my eyes to kind of going, well, I have this system sitting here. And it took me walking through this show to kind of open my mind to say, look, we can create a high-end denture without purchasing hundreds of dollars worth of carded teeth that are fairly, as much as they try to make them, unique, they're fairly generic. We could digitally design the teeth to truly make them one of a kind and actually highlight and give it character. And so that was, of course, we had the milling machine, which I have implemented into the lab. It's milling plastics. It's a monster. It just chews through the plastics and really, so that's an obvious thing. And then the TrueJet, that's an obvious, thing that would be great to incorporate. But the one thing that I would say that just enlightened me as I walked on the floor and was just maybe utilizing the Gradia and taking it a step further with some cases. So that would be the one thing that I think that's going to be a little bit of a game changer in the lab. And I think when you get around all these people and everybody's starting to think outside of the box, it just gets your mind going. And I think that's kind of what happened to me. It was kind of like a light bulb, like, duh. I have a whole drawer full of that stuff that I use, just certain parts of it here and there. And let's go crazy with it. And so that's what I'm going to do.
Getting your artistry back in.
Yeah, because that's what everyone says. Oh, the digital. No, the digital is allowing you to create the foundation of a case, very consistent and very nice, and then you can take it from there and do it what you want. I mean, you can create a really nice looking denture, just kind of milling or printing a base and milling or printing teeth. But as you know, different patients have different desires, different doctors have different desires, and different labs have different desires. And I think the digital, what we have going digitally with 3D printing or milling, allows for satisfy anyone's desire as far as what their end result they want it to be.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. So I'm going to launch another poll question, if that's okay with you, gentlemen. And then I want to touch a little bit on your actual lectures. So here we go. We have poll questions. Number 2, did you attend any of the Zahn education classes? So I'm just curious to see. So if you guys wouldn't mind answering this one question for us. Dan, I'm going to start with you about the lecture. And we talked about speed sintering zirconia. The lecture was called Blazing Hot Same-Day Turnarounds with Zerlix Transitions in the Shempaz CS Furnace. What were some of the questions that you received from the attendees about speed sintering? And what do you think the key takeaway is that you would like the industry to know about speed sintering zirconia?
So there were several questions. I think more so people are at awe at what the possibilities are. So I'll share with you a little bit, about 3 years ago or so, when the project first came online, when I was first approached about it, and I was a part of kind of the research and development of this, where it's like 7 hours or 9 hours, they want to, the conversation was, how do we make it faster? And I honestly did not think it was possible. And certainly not as possible as the 22.4 minutes. So obviously there were programs for 4.5 hours. You had some limitations with how many units and the span and so on and so forth, and you still do. But to be able to get it in under an hour, I would tell whoever would tell me that they're absolutely crazy. There's no way, because of how we know how zirconia works. Now, since being involved in this, we were able to have 3 validation tests, one of them being independent for color and so on. Another one is the manufacturer, obviously. And then the third one was we sent samples over to the university for testing. And what they found was absolutely amazing, that there was no statistical difference in the level of translucency and the level of shade and chroma, and most importantly, no statistical difference in the grain size as well as the MPAs. It was a slight, but not statistically enough to deviate from what. So whether a laboratory now has in the repertoire with the Zerlix transitions, which I think is a very, very pretty zirconia, because you can accomplish some very high aesthetic restorations, whether on the anterior, posterior, or anything anywhere in between. But you're able to now utilize if a 7-hour cycle, a 9-hour cycle, whatever it is, but then you also can do a speed cycle for 22.4 minutes. It is limiting up to 7 crowns at a time, but you can repeat that however much you want, because it has more to do with the caloric mass of the zirconia. But nonetheless, you can achieve the same type of outcome with grain size, strength, translucency, and color as you do in the same 7 or 9 hour cycle. So I thought, to me, that was absolutely incredible. And that's where laboratories were really, really interested, because one of the examples or a case study that I kind of presented, in the ceramic world and in the laboratory world, we've always had a patient that needed something of a rush. And sure enough, it was typically 100% rush fee if it was within the same day. Mm-hmm. And, I suggest doing very much the same with this sintering oven, the CS from Shempaz, because now you can offer that service. Now, I also have to take a step back and say that it doesn't replace the sintering oven, because the fast fire, for lack of better terms, I'm just calling it that, that's not the name of it, it's Shempaz CS, but it can only run for 2.5 hours straight. So you can't replace your sintering oven with an oven like this. But in fact, what I suggest is for every laboratory that's looking to offer this type of service to their clientele, and it's completely a decision to the laboratory, offer that as an ancillary or a secondary, and you can run multiples of 22.4 minute cycles, as many as you'd like, but still maintain your workhorse sintering oven where you're doing the bulk of your work and everything in between. So I think it gives more options, more control to the laboratory, and more, viability to what it is that they can offer their clinicians. Because you never want to say no to a clinician, and certainly the clinician would have to say no to the patient. But now you have the ability of being able to say yes, yeah, within an hour we can scan, design in 10 minutes, mill out in another, let's call it 20 minutes, center in 20 minutes. So within an hour you can have everything completed and ready for that patient. And I think that's really revolutionary for us as a laboratory industry to be able to offer that service to our clinicians.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to get to the results. It seems that 75% of the attendees that were in lab day and came to our ballroom did take some of our courses. So I want to thank everybody for trusting us with your education. It means the world to all of us here at Zahn Education. So thank you. And thank you to all our presenters. You guys, thank you, because, your level of expertise and knowledge and bringing that to us and bringing your knowledge to the attendees is why they show up. So I want to thank you guys as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Milos, you did a dual lecture with Dan on desk components and all on X fabrication. What questions do you remember receiving from on the subject?
Sure. So there's always a little bit of reservation from technicians who are used to doing things a certain way, especially when it comes to implant restorative. They like the tried and true method of creating custom abutments and then cementable crowns. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to understand that if they were to switch to doing screw retain restorations with DES, how easy is that going to be for them? And sort of what are the quirks of using the system? So they wanted to know, for instance, for angulated screw channel, is it going to be the same driver? So we had to reiterate that the benefit of doing angulated screw channel tie-based restorations with DES is there's a single unified angle screwdriver that comes in different lengths, but the head of the driver is the same. It can be implemented to screw in all angulated tie bases, which means if you have a Nobel replace implant next to an active, next to a Straumann, all in the same arch, you can use a single driver to do screw in all of the parts. There was some concern with how tall can the restoration be that sits over those tie bases, and we sort of jumped into the little physics of what the vertical forces, how the vertical forces affect some of these restorations, and how the cantilever forces affect, which we stated that we were more concerned with cantilever forces and not so much with like vertical forces for the restoration. And we reiterated how these tie bases come pre-sandblasted, which means they already come with a pre-coated surface that we don't modify in any way, and we cement directly to that, and allows for really incredible strength. And just reassuring them how many compatible parts are available, how many implant platforms are supported, because so many people from different countries work with different implant systems, where they might get a doctor that only does Straumann, and this one does Nobel, this one does Implant Direct, and so on and so forth. So they need to reassure themselves that if I switch to the system, I'm going to be able to provide all the services and support all those implants from all these dentists that I get work from. So it was very reassuring that for them to know that that's going to cover all of these for them.
What is the one thing about DES that you want to leave the industry with?
I would say ease of use and the angulated screw channel technology. That's really helped us streamline our workflow. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we talked about you speaking about about Meyerson's product Trusana and how it's a premium resin and how it really is ideal for most demanding indications. What kind of feedback did you get from the attendees from your lecture?
Yeah, it's always nice to spend a year giving webinars and talking to people on the phone and then using the material myself, and then to go to the show present again, and then afterwards have people come up and say, hey, I'm using it, it's working great, I love it. And then you also have people who are having some difficulties, and that's why we're there, is to troubleshoot and face to face say, okay, what's your process, what's and then you can help them. Oh, well, here's your problem, make sure you mix it properly, make sure you're following the validated processes, and so that's, as much as you love to hear the good things, it's also nice to help people, and to have them come up and leave from you going, okay, I'm excited to go back and implement some of these things that we talked about. And so I think that the feedback from that is, both of those things, even though one, some people would never want to hear that there's a problem, but there always is going to be some problems, and that's why we're there, is to say, look, I've been using it for many years more than other people, because it wasn't even on the market whenever I was using it. So I have that real-time knowledge, and I want to just get it in as many minds as I possibly can, and in as many ways as I possibly can, and Chicago is one of the best. So yeah, I think that's the biggie, as far as feedback that I appreciated while I was there, as it relates to their materials.
Right, there's always going to be problems, but it's how we deal with the solutions, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that shows, those people are there to learn, and so you already have somebody whose mind's open and ready to take on the information. And so, yeah, it's a nice place to be able to accomplish all those things.
And mostly it's following the IFUs, right? Just following the
Well,
steps.
I'll get people that call me all the time, and they're like, hey, I have some questions about the Trusana, and I just want to warn you, I'm new to this printing. I said, dude, I'm new too. We're all new to printing. There's nobody that got 20 years into this stuff. And so, but, I do have a lot of experience, relatively speaking. And so I want to make sure that we pass that on. I mean, it's definitely, we are moving at the speed of light when it comes to a lot of these technologies. And, I am finding that it can amplify a lot of the learning curves. And so again, we need to just educate and get that information out there as many minds as we can, so they have as short a period of a learning curve as possible.
Chris, what's next for Trusana?
Well, obviously the TrueJet technology, but Trusana is a tooth resin. But we will have, hopefully this summer, it's up to the FDA, hopefully this summer, possibly late summer to late this year, FDA, you just don't know, but the denture base will be released. And the denture base is excited. I've been using it for a few years as well, because the tooth resin has been formulated to be hard and wear resistant and all the things that you want a tooth to be. The denture based resin is the same chemistry with a different formulation, so that it is forgiving. You drop it, it bounces instead of fighting against the floor, right? So, and it also has been formulated to print fast. In a typical, like an Asiga, right now I'm printing most denture bases horizontally in about 45 minutes to an hour. And so it's a nice fast print. Everything that comes with Trusana, low absorption of moisture, the strength that's involved has now been kind of converted into a movement of the denture if it's dropped, rather than just a hard resistance to wear. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but Trusana bonds nicely to acrylics. So that's one thing that not a lot of material, 3D printed materials have. And so I'm really excited to have a tooth resin, a denture base, and a bonding agent will be a package system to create a denture, which we haven't had, just because denture base, it's supported by tissue. So the FDA approval is more involved than what we had with the teeth. So it's just taken longer, way longer than we expected. But hopefully soon it'll be available to kind of unleash upon the masses out there.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So now I want to get a little personal with you guys. We talked a lot about all of the education and seeing everybody, but what I want to know is, what kind of fun did you have? Where did you go? What was your last stop before coming home? I mean, mine was going to Morton Steakhouse with my team, and it was delicious and it was fun. And then, you know, we had a speaker dinner at Italy, and that was great. And now I want to visit the one here in my own state, you know, in New York, because I've never been there, but it was great in Chicago. And I really had a lot of fun and met a lot of great people. So Dan, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to launch one more poll as we're talking.
Awesome. So, I mean, fun. It's Chicago. It's a lot of fun. You know, we were able to really be able to go to a lot of different events and different parties and dinners and so on and so forth. You know, whether it's a steakhouse or, you know, Chicago style pizza, it's always fun. And it always seems to be around food. But nonetheless, one thing that for those, you know, with children, I mean, one of the things that I always do after lab day is at the airport, I stop by Garrett's Popcorn, which I mean, I can bring my kids whatever, they will never be as happy as I bring them home with that popcorn, which is absolutely amazing. So if nobody's had that opportunity to, Garrett's Popcorn, they sell it at the airport, they sell it also in the city, but it's a must have and it's absolutely delicious.
Oh, amazing. Never even heard of it. I'm going to have to look that one up. How about you, Milos?
Well, we always have a tradition that we go to Smith & Wollensky. That's our steakhouse of choice. We always used to go there, kind of get together and discuss, you know, the past, the present, and the future of the industry. After spending a whole day walking the floor, you absorb so much information, you could just kind of want to, like, you know, go over it with everyone else. And we usually get the tomahawk, the hanging tomahawk steak, and that gets flamed right in front of you. It gets nice crispy on the outside, medium rare on the inside.
Sounds great.
And yeah, and then there's this famous thing that happened a while back where we ordered a chocolate cake, and we ordered 5 because each person ordered a chocolate cake, to which the waiter was genuinely scared for our well-being. We did not understand what was going on. And it turned out when you order a chocolate cake at a steakhouse, they do bring you a full-size chocolate cake.
Oh, wow.
Just for you. So this year we ordered 1, but we always joke around with the waiter about the chocolate cake and making sure that is it still the same chocolate cake, and they always tell us yes, so be ready. So that was fun.
Oh, I like that. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, so as is a tradition, just about every single year except for one in the last 20, my birthday happens when we're in Chicago. And I turned 50 years old on Friday. And so Meyerson, we all had a dinner, kind of a company dinner at Meyerson, and it was at the name of it, but it was an Irish pub. And so I had fish and chips. What else are you gonna do? And they brought out this brownie ice cream thing with a candle on it, which was nice. And so I guess my wife had called and let everyone know, because every year she knows. There was one year where, you know, with leap year and different things going on, it was like a day or 2 before I left, my birthday happened. But either I'm flying on my birthday, or I'm there on my birthday, or I'm flying home on my birthday, whatever it is. I haven't been home for my birthday except for COVID and COVID year. So that was the thing we did, and that was a lot of fun. Saturday night, I was about dead to the world. So, sorry, that would have been Thursday night was the dinner. Friday night, I went downstairs, got some dinner, went upstairs and went to bed. I was exhausted. But yeah, that was kind of my birthday party, if you will.
That was nice. Happy birthday, Chris.
Yes,
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. So we have one question, Chris, and it's for you, from Craig, and he says the product is great, Trusana, but the smell he's not so crazy about. He wants to know, why is that?
Yeah, so it's just part of the chemistry. They are working on some possible manipulations of the chemistry to deaden that down, but that's one thing that I also was really impressed with in Chicago. Quattro actually has a cabinet for 3D printers now that hooks up to your suction unit to filtrate the smells. Just because you can smell Meyerson's doesn't mean that it's any less dangerous than any other resin that's out there. You really should have your 3D printers in an area where it has proper ventilation, so that any of those fumes that are involved get drawn out So just because Meyerson's has a little bit of a harsher smell than others doesn't mean that you aren't breathing in stuff that you shouldn't. So I like that question. Something that we're working on, but you should consider just get a little overhead from a normal, that would go over your stove. You just want to move that air and send it outside. Matter of fact, I just got a couple more printers and I'm expanding the hood system. I just building it out of wood, and I'll just have a simple filtration to move that air out. So good question. But I would, even if we aren't able to dial it in so that we don't have that a little bit of smell to it, I would definitely, whatever material you use, definitely get some air moving and draw that out of there.
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. Just because you can't smell it doesn't mean that it's not there. So proper ventilation is key. Absolutely. And wear gloves, right, Chris? That was another thing you mentioned in
Yeah,
your.
that's one thing that scares me. A lot of people that are doing 3D printing are denture technicians. Denture technicians are used to dip in their finger and monitor and shape and everything, right? We feel like we're invincible. 3D printing resins are nothing to be, to take, easy. Make sure you use all the proper gloves and eye protection in case it splashes, and ventilation. All those things are really, really important.
Thank you guys so much. I just want to go over what's coming up next on Zahn Academy. Next Wednesday, we have Dora Rodriguez coming back, and that's March 22nd. She's going to be, this is part 3 of her 3-part series on denture conversions, and that's going to be on the digital workflow. So that's this Wednesday, 3/22. Chris Schermerhorn will be back with us on Thursday, 3/23, and he'll be speaking about 100% digitally designed milled Zerlux acetyl frames. And this is part 1 of a part 2 series with Chris. Road shows are coming to a city near you. We have 2 coming up, one this month, and that's next week, 3/17, St. Patrick's Day. We're going to be having some fun with Dan Alter and a bunch of others in Anaheim, California. So if you're in the area, please go on and sign up for this. You get 6 scientific credits, and we're going to be talking about Dentsply's Lucitone digital print system and that 3D printing workflow, okay, along with the SIGA. So that'll be great. The next will be on April 21st, and that's going to be in Lexington, Kentucky, also on the Lucitone digital print system. That's all I have for this part of A Look in the Lab, and I hope to see you next week on Zahn Academy. And I just want to thank all of you so much for joining me today and for joining us in the Zahn Ballroom.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a great day,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you again.